week 8 or week 9?
Week 8.
All right, let's do it. It's week 8, and the second fiscal quarter of the year 2023. I go by Chief Alligator, and we have Chief Quietwater tonight, and we represent the Lost Confederacy channel. Last night was a very special night for the Chiefs on this channel. We got a chance to go to Sinetta TV and actually do a presentation that those that have subscribed to this channel or follow this channel, y'all are already aware of the information, and we've risen above that reality, and we're playing above the X's and O's, if you will. But there's a couple of things we want to take a little bit of time the first maybe 15, 20 minutes to get into some of the observations and some of the things that we can take back from our experience yesterday. So with that being said, Chief Quietwater, I'll let you get into it real quick while I kind of figure some stuff out on the back end, and we'll build on that situation briefly.
Okay. Yeah. Last night was definitely a great experience to be on a larger platform and to be able to share our information that we have gathered throughout the last couple of years, and that we come on here every week and present to you guys. So thank you so much for all the followers and the subscribers that tapped in last night. And thank you for your weekly support, because I do see a lot of the same names in here on a week-to-week basis. So we definitely want to thank you for that. And last night, it was great just being able to be on that platform and, be able to present the information. And again, as we state, as we're going through this journey, that no one still has been able to debunk what we've been putting out there this whole time in regards to what we have learned and what we are talking about in regards to how we're not represented in any documents or written into law. So that was a great thing. And I think it was a milestone for us. And, just the fact that we're able to get this information out to even more people, I think was the biggest thing that I took. That, of course, everybody is not going to agree. Of course, it's going to go over a lot of people's head with this information, with them not wanting to accept or not really take what we have done and being able to just decipher the truth and the facts of the information that we're given. But for the ones that did, we definitely appreciate the support for sure.
Okay. Anything good jump out to you about last night on Sinetta?
Good in regards to number one, the honor of being on his platform, being that that's one of the largest platform that, that he kind of gives the opportunity to people to give this information. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just having that opportunity, and giving thanks to and, respect to the people who we have been on their platforms in the past. We're just giving the information and hoping that we can get this information out to more and more people. So I think just being able to be on a larger platform.
Okay. What would be the baddest thing for you?
The baddest thing I would say for me, because I was looking at the chat, actually after I was, looking at it while we were on it, but I did take the time to look at the comments and the live chat after, looking at it after the fact. And just the amount of people who it definitely went over their head, like despite everything that we're able to show and point to and cite to in regards to these legal documents, still people are not getting it. So I think that's the bad thing in regards to the information that we're given, is that some people still drift off to their belief systems and, things like that. So I think that's the only bad, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, myself as well. Shout out to how we got to Sinetta. So I'll start off. It started with Indigenous One. That
Mhm.
was the first channel that we actually went on and did a presentation. So that was the first seed that was planted. So it's always salute to Indigenous One. Second, it was Aboriginal TV. Aboriginal TV actually played um, a huge role in last night's presentation. So definitely want to say shout out to Ab TV, second platform we were on. And in addition to that, got us on, did what he could, made it happen so that we could get a chance, to go on Sinetta TV. And then thirdly, it's going to be Copper Empress. That was the third channel that we went on and provided information. And we've been on all three of those channels multiple times. So it was kind of like a build up where you're putting out information. And when you put something out, and we're sharing this because there may be some people that came from Sinetta that are subscribed and want to kind of understand what we're about, what we do over here. If you do your genealogy on your family, if you can step out of being told who you are and being told who your grandparents were and your great grandparents were, and you pick up the mantle and say, before I lie to my kid and say that we came from slaves, let me as an adult do the adult thing and do the homework and find out before I lie to my child and tell them that we come from slaves, which that's the narrative that our kids are told about people who look like us when we send them to school. And so every parent has to make that decision. And it's no disrespect if you have made the decision and you defaulted to a lie that you know you did not vet, right? But what was interesting, a couple of points interesting to me. So definitely salute to everybody, Copper Empress, Ab TV, Indigenous One, and then we get to Sinetta. Sinetta, I've learned a lot from people that was on Sinetta panel over the years. I was watching Sinetta back in 07, 08. So of course I'm gonna respect the grind, him starting right across from the Apollo Theater on 125th Street in Harlem, New York, you know, getting where he is now. I respect that hustle. I respect that grind. And so much love to him as well. The biggest thing that jumped out to me was how when I shared what got me, if you want to use the word conscious, how it went over people's head if I use your word, Chief Quietwater. What I would ask anybody that's listening to this video is when you start to trace your family, I use Ancestry. I can only tell you what I did. Ancestry was a great tool for me because when I really think about it, I had family members that have done things when they were living. And so there's records, right? Records will populate, when I started my journey of paper trail. But let's just take, for the sake of argument, you track birth certificates. That's one of the documents that I was tracking when I was putting my pieces together. So let me start with me. My birth certificate says Black. Now, don't get caught up if yours don't have a race on it. Chief Firewater, does yours have a race on it? You're on mute.
No, actually, mine doesn't. It has no race on it, surprisingly.
So now let's educate the people because we all about just putting information out, then we got to be adults about it. What state were you born in?
Ohio.
Okay, so that's a litmus test. So I'm born in Florida. So my race on my birth certificate is Black. My mother was born in Georgia. Her birth certificate says colored. My father was born in Savannah, Georgia. His birth certificate says Negro.
Wow.
That's
different classifications.
That's going to tell you something when you go on this journey. How am I Black? My mama colored, my daddy say Negro. But if I go back 3 grandparents, it's Cherokee by blood. That should have been the conversation to me last night. What happened? That's what we're showing on this channel. What happened to a group of people that can track documents showing they're American, but then fast forward to me when I'm born and my birth certificate say Black. So how am I 3 times grandparent, Cherokee by blood? My mama colored, my daddy Negro, I'm Black. So this is a perfect time where we are on our timeline. We're reading documents where a lot of fuckery happened.
Right.
So that was big to me, that everybody just jumped out the woodworks about, oh, you Indian, you Indian, you Indian. Not understanding how they made us niggas. They made us niggas. They've made us despise the land that our own ancestors are buried in. That's one of the biggest things I took from last night. We will argue ourselves down about graveyards that we can go to in real time.
Right, right.
I can go to the country tonight and I can go to a church, not gonna name the name, and all my ancestors on my mama's side, up until the same grandparents that I track back, that's Cherokee by blood, they all buried in that graveyard right next to that church.
Right.
But the school system is so powerful with its military brainwashing that your own people will start looking at you and saying, well, why are you over here? You ain't one of us. And when they were saying we weren't one of them, it was because of the word Afro-American. And one of the things that we expose on this channel is Black, colored, Negro, Afro-American. It's not a group of people, lawfully.
Right.
And where we are in our information today is the 1968 Civil Rights Act. And this was the last fuckery up until 2020. Because now they're trying to take us into another reclassification, which is people of color.
People of color, right.
And they're blending in the sexuality, the gay movement and stuff. So now what they want to do is take male and female off. They've already, well, let me stop right here and ask a question. Who gets reclassified? Chief
It's really it's us.
Well, what do you call that type of people? If you can reclassify some people.
They're meaningless. I mean, literally, they're meaningless. They're invisible to the structure, basically, is the way that I see it. The way that I have to process it is that we don't mean anything to the structure. So therefore, they can place us here and change the, the classification throughout the years to fit whatever narrative it is that they have during that time period. So yeah, I think that is that's my thoughts, is that we're invisible to the government.
Okay. I'm just come straight up the middle with it. The only person to me that gets reclassified is a prisoner. Let's be real, y'all. Somebody got a family member that's in jail.
True. Right.
If you have a family member or a close friend of yours and you were able to track that experience about what that process looks like for them, when they go to prison, the first thing they got to do is go through what department? Classification.
Wow.
You see,
and assign a number. Their name don't matter at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And so out here in what they call the free world, we're the group of people that are getting classified. How do you know being reclassified? Track the birth certificates. I'm gonna say to you, if you're 20 years old, or if you're in your 20s, I'm gonna say track your mama, your grandmama, and your great grandparents. The older you are, the less you got to go back. But yeah, they're able to take us to Black in the 60s, take us to Negro through the 60s. In the 70s, we Black. In the 90s, we Afro-American. But the interesting point, my second point on this, when we got to the word Afro-American and we pulled up the definition of Indian in the 1968 Civil Rights Act, the reaction that I got from some of the people that was asking questions, it was almost as if, why are you exposing this?
Yeah, right.
And what I took from that moment was, this is the dirty secret amongst our people, right? Because once you figure out, well, damn, we stopped, I'm this based on my great grandparents, but now then you look at where you are and what you're classified as on your birth certificate. So then a common sense told me, what the fuck happened? Who am I?
Right.
So we start going on this timeline of what happened, and then we get down to the bottom of it. Right here in 1968, there were a lot of people who looked like us that knew exactly what the government did in writing. While our people are emotionally torn up because they just shot MLK, you got riots going on in all the cities because they did this 1 week after they killed them. So they did that paperwork in while we was highly emotional. And then they built a whole organization around Black.
Right.
Which is how we go into the 70s. Black power, all this, and it still lingers on today. Then we go into the 90s and it's Afro-American, and that's where we are now. So you got all these people talking about Africa and Afro-American history. But what got exposed last night is they don't know nothing about American history.
And I think that was a big thing too, is the fact that you can have that argument about, you know, life began in Africa, but we're fighting on this land right now to, you know, we're not given what we're deserved. We're always at the bottom of the totem pole. And that just don't seem to matter to people, because it's like, why are you trying to identify or link back up with what you feel that, you know, where your lineage go back to, when right here in America, you're being cheated, robbed, benign and neglected, and you're not, you know, you're not being treated the way that you need to be treated. So deal with this first, and then if need be, you know, go back to Africa. But we need to deal with this right here at hand right now, is what the way that I feel. And I just think that, yeah, we have just been like, even through this journey since we started this, there's so many things that I've learned through this journey that, you know, you just go to school and you learn the information, you recite the information, you teach that information to your kid, and you never stop to think about where this information actually came from. And that's what we've been able to do, is pull these documents and actually read for ourselves. But the 1968 Indian Rights Act, that was one of the biggest things for me. Like, who would have thought that it said Indian? Who would have thought that? You know, we just known it as the 1968 Civil Rights Act. So I think that it all goes back to us not digging, and you don't have to dig far. That's the thing, especially with the information age. You don't have to go too far, or this information is easy to find. It's right there in plain sight.
So, you know, typically what we do every week, we're going to give you a different American inventor, because what we're doing is just providing proof of claim via documentation of the American and American history, and just reading the government documents of what the government did to us. My last point is you know, the more I reflect on it, it's still kind of fresh. I'll be able to kind of, you know, recall more things that I took from last night. But overall, great experience, good energy. But you're going to see what you're going to see when you know what you know. It's for the kids, man. That's I think Generation X, we're that generation where the generation prior to us, they're gone as far as any fight is concerned, because they're on the tail end of life, right? So we're in the middle age, or we're in the prime of our lives. And I think that's part of the reason why the government named us Generation X, because we're the generation right after the Civil Rights Act. We're the 70s babies.
Yeah.
So if we figure out what happened,
game over.
We can change this whole thing around. So it's really on us. We know that there's a school to prison pipeline. We know miseducation is real. You know, at this point, it's just really a matter of us facing our fears. Some of this stuff, we have to walk away from it, because it's not helping us, it's hurting us. Because We're not being taught civics. So when we leave high school, we don't know how the city works, the county, the state, or the federal government that we're up under. And we're not told true history of the state and the federal government that we're up under. So that gives them a better opportunity to continue to benign and neglect us for another generation. If that's my business model and that's what I'm forecasting, how can I push this thing out another 100 years? Well, it's all dependent on how long we keep this real American over here in the nigger mentality. How can we keep them focused on reservation? I mean, it's a lot of smoke signals out here now. It's a sophisticated formula because you got natives on reservations. A lot of people don't understand what that is. You got our group. You got melanated immigrants coming over here. That's the last point that I'm gonna bring up tonight. The last caller that I spoke with last night, he exposed how melanated immigrants, well, let me say it like this. He didn't expose it because it's not on him. It's on us. This is our house. You got people in your house that's not even your family. Think about if you got your own spot and you got homeboys or associates. You got people in your house that's not even your family, using your toilet, using your bathroom, not cleaning up, not telling you I appreciate it for, giving me a place to stay. That's the arrogance of these immigrants coming over here. But is it really their arrogance, Chief Quietwater? Is it our lack of knowing that we are the American?
I definitely think it's our lack of the knowledge, but I also think it's their arrogance. I mean, listening to him last night, feeling like he entitled, the way that he was talking. And I think most people come over here with that mindset, and we allow them to. I mean, it's on us at the end of the day. I feel that it's on us, but yeah, I think it's definitely a sense of entitlement. I mean, he said it out of his own mouth that the Garfield guy, he said out of his own mouth that he reaped the benefits of, what's really earmarked for us. And kind of what he said, I'm not verbatim, but basically, yeah. So I do think it's their arrogance because they know they're going to get it. Just like the people, like Sinetta was mentioning, the people in New York or anyone that's in New York in the live chat, know what's going on up there with the immigrants. It's going to be the same thing because they're putting them above us and they're just giving and giving and giving. So yeah, a sense of entitlement comes with that. That's like a child, you giving your kid any and everything that they need. When they become late teenagers to early adults, they're going to expect those things and they're going to feel entitled and not know how things really work in regards to you have to earn, you know what I'm saying? You got to work hard for XYZ. So I definitely think it's a little bit of both for sure.
Yep. I'm gonna just sum it up with, it's like you got a car and you a teenager and you the first one in your neighborhood with a car. What do you do to all your friends that want to go out? You tax them gas money, right? What you got on the gas?
Right.
When we realize that we are the American and all these industries that the world we invented it, but other people make our stuff now. We realize that all of this is ours. Then you start thinking like, yeah, everybody got to pay a tax. Yeah, you want to come to America? Fine. You got to pay that perpetual American tax. But when they tell us that we slaves, we walk away from everything that we've created, not realizing we're supposed to be taxing everybody.
Exactly.
The Vietnamese, the European, the African, all y'all. It's our stuff. Yeah, you got to pay that tax, bro. You want to go out tonight? What you got on the gas?
Yeah.
So that is just that simple. And now you can clearly see when you're talking to a Pan-Africanist who is that's a belief system. That's not your family. That's not real. That's no offense to nobody. That's your belief system.
Right.
You can go to the cemetery and see your family members. So as long as they got us thinking we slaves, we missing out on money. That's how I'm looking at it. Look at all these plays running around every day. We supposed to be getting a tax.
Exactly.
So let's get into it. You want to go ahead and what we've been doing since we've been in the Civil Rights Act is we like to play this little video of Lyndon Baines Johnson 1 week after the United States government killed Martin Luther King. The federal government hurry up and finalized the 1968 Civil Rights Act. And what we've shown up until this point is none of these Civil Rights Act, 1964, 1965, and 1968, none of them have a lawful word or definition for Negro, Black, colored, or Afro-American. And nobody who's educated on law who looks like us is really talking about that. So we're going to play this video for you real quick. And what we want you to pay attention to is the president using the word Negro. I want you to watch the power of media and the power of TV. He says Negro, but Negro's nowhere in these documents. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's get ready to get this going. I'm up.
It hasn't popped up yet, but it should be. It says it's starting to share. Okay. Can't hear it. You're muted.
You said you can't hear it?
No, you were muted.
Okay, my bad.
Even while
How about now?
President Johnson talked to Chancellor Klaus about America's responsibility in a time of crisis and challenge, word came from Capitol Hill that Congress had passed and sent to the White House the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Included in the measure was a landmark open housing bill, which, when fully effective, would forbid discrimination in approximately 80% of all housing offered for rent or for sale in the United States.
I do not exaggerate when I say that the proudest moments of my presidency have been times such as this, when I have signed into law the promises of a century. I shall never forget that it is more than 100 years ago when Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. But it was a proclamation. It was not a fact. And in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we affirmed through law that men equal under God are also equal when they seek a job, when they go to get a meal in a restaurant, or when they seek lodging for the night in any state in the Union. And now the Negro families no longer suffer the humiliation of being turned away because of their race. In the Civil Rights Act of 1965, we affirmed through law for every citizen in this land the most basic right of democracy, the right of a citizen to vote in an election in his country. In the 5 states where the act had its greater impact, Negro voter registration has already more than doubled. Now with this bill, the voice of justice speaks again. It proclaims that fair housing for all human beings who live in this country is now a part of the American way of life. We all know that the roots of injustice run deep, but violence cannot redress a solitary wrong or remedy a single unfairness. And we just must put our shoulders together and put a stop to both. The time is here. Action must be now.
All right. So Couple of points while we're playing that. If you take some mental notes, you heard him say Negro about 5 or 6 times. And what we're going to show you tonight, once we get to the reading of the 1968 Civil Rights Act, because that's where we are in the chronological timeline of government records, Negro is nowhere in writing. So what we're showing you is the power of propaganda when you're warring against a group of people. We got to remember, I wasn't born at this time, but they're rioting in Detroit. They're rioting in Harlem, New York. They're rioting in all what we know now as quote unquote black cities. They were burning those cities down April 11th, 1968. They just killed King on April 4th, a week later, 7 days prior, 1968. The government, how do we get control of these prisoners of war on the land? I got to come out and tell them what they want to hear. So he told you that the Negro can, now he's desegregated and he's not intensely military occupied. So he can go to a restaurant and eat and go to a hotel. He told you that you're a part of, you can get you a place to live now, this, that, and the third. But in reality, what happened is the United States government opened its doors to the world, and we were allowed to come in because they ended the segregation, created a Voting Rights Act for the world. Anybody in the world who wanted to be a US citizen could vote, not have to worry about discrimination like the niggas on the land or the prisoners of war on the land, and will, give you housing. We're not going to do you as bad as what we did, quote unquote, black people. So we got these benefits by default. So what we're going to be showing, everybody that's rocking with us been knowing how we rocking, but we may have some people new to the live tonight. So that's what we're doing, is we're getting out of make-believe and getting down to what really happened. Be quiet, Water, you got it with the inventor. If you want to share your screen or however you want to do it.
Okay. This week's inventor is, hold on one second. This week's inventor is Lita Newman. She improved the hairbrush. The patent number is 614335A. Patent date, November 15th, 1898. So she invented the first hairbrush with synthetic bristles. She was born in Ohio between 1865 and 1885. She spent most of her life in New York, but I couldn't find any information when she died or anything. So her decision to improve the design of the hairbrush derived from her own experience as a Black or American woman and a hairdresser. She wanted the process of brushing hair to be more hygienic and effective. Most hairbrushes at that time were made using animal hair, but the material was too soft to effectively treat the thicker texture hair. She used synthetic fibers, which were more durable and easier to clean. So her name was Lita, L-Y-D-A Newman.
And what year was her invention again?
1898.
Okay. 1898. Got it.
Correct. 1898.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we can get into the, I'll do the Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote. You've got the 1968 Civil Rights Act in the chat.
You want me to pull it up?
If you can pin it in the chat. You have it pulled up?
Hold on. The 1968, yes, I do. Hold on.
While you dropping that in there, if you want to share your screen for the Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote, I'll do the legal definitions while you're doing that.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
And for us, I would just say we all need to have these records. I'm going to say probably 8 out of 10 of us have never read the 1964, 65, or 68 Civil Rights Acts. So what we like to do is we like to have paperwork parties over here. So it's public information, so why are we hiding it? We want everybody to have it, because the more we're all on the same page and start knowing what time it is, the harder it is for the people to stand in front of us and just run game on us and tell us anything. I'll do number 2 today. Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We do a quote from him weekly. Quote 2 says, Negroes, however, sometimes choose their own leaders, but unfortunately, they are too often of the wrong kind. Negroes do not readily follow persons with constructive programs. Almost any sort of exciting appeal or trivial matter presented to them may receive immediate attention and temporarily at least liberal support. When the bubble collapses, of course, these same followers will begin to decry Negro leadership and call these misrepresentative of the group rascals and scoundrels. He wrote this book, The Miseducation of the Negro, back in the early 20th century, or what we know as the 1900s. And this goes right in line with the video that we just saw, that what Lyndon Baines Johnson did on TV was an exciting appeal or trivial matter presented to them may receive immediate attention. So him going on TV talking about Negro can do this, the Negro can do that, Negroes might have started jumping up and down like, okay, we ain't got to tear out our city no more. They done gave us the right to housing and the right to vote and all this and that. And then later on down the line, we start realizing, oh, you really bringing people who look like us over here to put on top of us. And then the bubble collapses. Anything you want to share on that?
I would kind of equate it to 2020, you know, with George Floyd and how we all stood up. Most of us stood up, the world stood up. And then, you know, it just eventually died down because of distractions and things like that. It's like we don't see things through all the way to the end. And like you always say, with that situation in 2020, we should have just never stopped. So I think that goes in line with this week's quote.
Absolutely. So we're going to do legal definitions and maroon points.
You want me to do them?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, so legal definitions. Number 1, American, a native of America. Number 2, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number 5, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Number 6, education, an enlightening experience. And then let's go down to the maroon historical points. Number 1, was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number 3, maroon leaders were first and foremost military figures. Number 4, Maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass. And number 5, Maroons knew their European enemy, language, defenses, and plans.
All right, so we're going to go straight into the 1968 Civil Rights Act. Shout out to everybody that's in the building with us. Leaders are readers. So yeah, all you have to do is check out the description section on any one of our live videos, and we add the links in the description. So you'll always be able to get these documents and have them for yourself. But what we do is we read them over here and we build on them. So let's get into it. Let me know when you're ready to share it.
Okay.
While you're doing that, yeah, that took some energy out of me last night. Shit, I felt like a preacher that hadn't did a Sunday. Like I did a 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock service, and a 5 o'clock service. Can we go up to the top of this document, the Title II, real quick? And this is the 1968 Civil Rights Act. This act came through.
You say Title II?
Mm-hmm. This act came through Congress 1 week after they assassinated King. They came out with the 1968 Civil Rights Act, and what we want to do is we want to cite to the definition of Indian. Gotta go all the way up.
Oh,
All right, Title II.
all right.
All right. So those that have the link, they can click on it. Right here, you see, can you scroll down just a little bit so we can see the Title II? Up, my bad, up, right there. All right, so Title II, Rights of Indians. So this is what happens when we have a group of people that don't have real leadership and they're not informing the people about what happened. So what we see right here is the rights of Indians, and we see four definitions. The four definitions are going to be Indian tribe, powers of self-government, Indian court, and Indian. What we were asking last night on Sanetta's channel was, can somebody show us a lawful document? Lawful documents come through Congress. Nobody could ever produce a document where the United States government defined or wrote what a Negro, what a Black, what a colored, or what an Afro-American is. The only time that they've given a clear definition is of Indian. According to the United States government constitution, who's the only group of people not taxed? The Indian. Today in 2023, there's a term called Native American. But is that a lawful term? Just something to think about. So when we're talking to people that are of the prisoner of war group, what we say on this channel is, what else could a group of people be that if you trace your family tree and you find out that you're Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, what do you call a group of people that were classified once they were military occupied? Because that's the only way that our family members could end up on a foreign government's records. Let's be clear on that. And I think that's another problem. We embrace documents from a foreign government that has destroyed and taken everything from us. So when we say census record, social security card, driver's license, we run around and claim that shit like it's ours, but we never read the back of it and actually see whose it actually is. So what do we call that group of people that were classified in the 17, 16, and 1800s as Chickasaw? But then when you start looking at your family tree and looking at birth certificates, you start realizing that, wow, so this generation's Choctaw, but damn, why is my two-time great-grandparent Negro? And why is my great-grandparent colored? And why is my parents Black? And why am I Black? What else would you call that group of people that's always been reclassified on the land? Nobody else but us has gone through this process. What do you call it? You can't say slave because it doesn't say slave on our federal documents when you're doing your genealogy. No, let me speak for me. That's another thing we got to do. When we're talking about tracing your family, everybody's going to have a story to tell, but the overall story will be the same. We're under military occupation from a foreign government. So on this screen is the four definitions of what this government recognizes as an Indian. We've yet to read a document that gave us a lawful definition of what Black, colored, Afro-American, and Negro is. So why, as adults, are we claiming to be something that this government has never lawfully defined? I can't say that enough. Why are we claiming something that the government never lawfully defined? That means that our consent makes us benign and neglected. When you accept that you're Black, you just stepped outside of what this government recognizes. When you call yourself Afro-American, you stepped outside of what this government recognizes. And it's unfortunate that people who look like us don't want to tell that truth. So we can get into the readings for today.
So we're starting
At B.
here. B.
Okay. And so what we were reading about last week was the power of the secretary within this housing. We're in the housing section. We're in section 8 of the 1968 Civil Rights Act. So last week we were talking about all the powers of the secretary. So we're going to be picking up on that. So I'll go ahead and pick up real quick. Section B, the certified agency having so commenced such proceedings fails to carry forward such proceedings with reasonable promptness, or the secretary determines that the certified agency no longer qualifies for certification under this subsection with respect to the relevant jurisdiction. The secretary may certify an agency under this subsection only if the secretary determines that the substantive rights protected by such agency in the jurisdiction with respect to which certification is to be made, the procedures followed by such agency, the remedies available to such agency, and the availability of judicial review of such agency's actions. So what we're talking about now is we're still talking powers of secretary and what they can or can't do with agencies that have to report to that secretary when it pertains to housing. The availability of judicial review of such agency's action are substantially equivalent to those created by and under this title. Before making such certification, the secretary shall take into account the current practices and past performance, if any, of such agency during the period which begins on the date of the enactment of the Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988 and ends 40 months after such date. Each agency certified, including an agency certified for interim referrals pursuant to 24 CFR 115-.11, unless such agency is subsequently denied recognition under 24 CFR 115.7 for the purpose of this title on the day before such date, shall for the purposes of this subsection be considered certified under this section with respect to those matters for which such agency was certified on that date. So in summary, what we're doing right now is when you were getting housing, they set up agencies that could deal with the different claims or different matters that you had going on. All of that eventually is going to go back to the secretary. And so the secretary, they're just laying out in detail all the different responsibilities and powers that this secretary has over this fair housing.
And it's crazy that there had to be people just couldn't live freely because there was a lot of governance over the way that people were living with all of these detailed policies and things that were put in place. Sure, it was made them very uncomfortable.
Correct. I'll pick up, if the secretary determines in an individual case that an agency has not been able to meet the certification requirements within this 40-month period due to exceptional circumstances, such as the infrequency of legislation sessions in that jurisdiction, the secretary may extend such period by not more than 8 months. Not less frequently than every 5 years, the secretary shall determine whether each agency certified under this subsection continues to qualify for certification. The secretary shall take appropriate action with respect to any agency not so qualifying. So yeah, the secretary is the Lord over federal housing. Reasonable cause, determination, and effect. The secretary shall, within 100 days after the filing of the complaint, or when the secretary takes further action under subsection F2 with respect to a complaint, within 100 days after the commencement of such further action, determine based on the facts whether reasonable cause exists to believe that a discriminatory housing practice has occurred or is about to occur, unless it is impracticable to do so, or unless the secretary has approved a conciliation agreement with respect to the complaint. If the secretary is unable to make the determination within 100 days after the filing of the complaint, or when the secretary takes further action under subsection F2 with respect to a complaint, within 100 days after the commencement of such further action, the secretary shall notify the complainant and respondent in writing of the reason for not doing so. So the secretary is a federal employee. I can see a situation where the secretary could be getting kickback money from huge commercial property owners, landowners. You follow me? You gotta try to put yourself in. So what if you were living in slums at that time? That was the word, one of the words of that era, right? You got a slumlord. So say you put a complaint in, right? Well, that person may be able to give a kickback that can get back to the federal secretary who's overseeing this, because what we're really dealing with is a kangaroo court. We talked about that last week. You got a secretary playing Lord. And this secretary has several different ways as to not hear your complaint. So I'm pretty sure a lot of our people got caught up in this whole housing thing, just with probably living in inhumane conditions and just never really getting anywhere going through the claims process. Anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm pretty sure that it was set up like that, where the secretary would get kickbacks probably from developers and things like that, to just, as long as they're getting paid, to just make things run at the expense and probably the suffering of the people who were actually living there.
Gotcha. I'll pick up here at 2A. If the secretary determines that reasonable cause exists to believe that a discriminatory housing practice has occurred or is about to occur, the secretary shall, except as provided in subparagraph C, immediately issue a charge on behalf of the aggrieved person for further proceeding under section 812. Such charge shall consist of a short and plain statement of the facts upon which the secretary has found reasonable cause to believe that a discriminatory housing practice has occurred or is about to occur. 2, shall be based on the final investigative report. And 3, need not be limited to the facts or grounds alleged in the complaint filed under section 810. Wow, it ain't even got to be based on facts. Section C, if the secretary determines that the matter involves the legality of any state or local zoning or other land use law or ordinance, the secretary shall immediately refer the matter to the attorney general for appropriate action under section 184 instead of issuing such charge. Okay, so that's critical right there, because now it shows the secretary's, scroll back up to what I just read. It shows the limitation of the secretary powers. And we talked about this last night. We're talking about jurisprudence. We're not taught civics no more. So I think one of the things, if somebody would have asked me, what's one of the things that we could do as a group of people? All these nonprofit organizations that receive your, we just gonna say money for the sake of this conversation, all these churches and different nonprofit organizations, y'all need to open up y'all buildings free of charge in the name of Jesus, Moses, Allah, Muhammad, Seventh-day Adventist. And you need to teach the community that you're receiving money from. Let's start with a civics class. Free of charge. We should not have to pay that. If the community is taking care of you in that nonprofit building, that church building, that same community, these mamas should be able to drop them kids off and themselves and sit in a civics class so we can start understanding the government that we live under. You can't run something until you first understand how to operate within something. You got to be a good employee first before you can be an owner of something. We want our own, but the majority of us don't know civics. So in this reading right here, federal level and state level, it's 2 different jurisdictions, 2 different courts. I like to think left hand, right hand. State's my left hand, right's the federal government. If it's not a federal government matter, the secretary's hands are tied. She got to turn that over to the attorney general. And look at the words they used. If the secretary determines that the matter involves the legality of any state or local zoning or other land use law or ordinance, she ain't got no jurisdiction over that because she's fed. So she got to pass that ball. Just little things like this is why we lose out here in society when we're competing with other people. Go ahead, Chief Firewater.
Yeah, and I would just say, just going back to last night, I think that's the basis of, the confusion and the disagreements of among us is that we don't understand how the government works. So we talk all of this stuff about what we want, what we deserve, and all of that, but not understanding how it works. We'll never get anywhere if we don't know how it works and how you have to properly set yourself up to be able to break away from this whole system. So I definitely agree with you in regards to knowing civics and how the government operates.
Yep, we got to do it. I'll pick up. If the secretary determines that no reasonable cause exists to believe that a discriminatory housing practice has occurred or is about to occur, the secretary shall promptly dismiss the complaint. The secretary shall make public disclosure of each such dismissal. The secretary may not issue a charge under this section regarding an alleged discriminatory housing practice after the beginning of the trial of a civil action commenced by the aggrieved party under an act of Congress or a state law, seeking relief with respect to that discriminatory housing practice. So again, looking at what the secretary can and cannot do. Service of copies of charge. After the secretary issues a charge under this section, the secretary shall cause a copy thereof together with information as to how to make an election under section 812 and the effect of such an election to be served on each respondent name in such charge, together with a notice of opportunity for a hearing at a time and place specified in the notice, unless that election is made, and on each aggrieved person on whose behalf the complaint was filed. So we're talking about how they get served. Let's go down to subpoenas, given of evidence. So yeah, this is basically a kangaroo court process. This secretary can literally take you through her own kangaroo court process. Section 811A. In general, the secretary may, in accordance with this subsection, issue subpoenas and order discovery in aid of investigation in hearings under this title. Such subpoenas and discovery may be ordered to the same extent and subject. Let's scroll down. To the same limitations as would apply if the subpoenas or discovery were ordered or served in aid of a civil action in the United States District Court for the district in which the investigation is taking place. Yeah, secretary got a lot of power. I just keep thinking about slumlords of the 70s and 80s, you know, those of us that have family members that did grow up in projects. It literally probably took close to an act of Congress for you to get your complaint heard. Like if your living conditions were just unlivable and you wanted to file a claim, we're reading the process of what you would have had to go through. Go ahead, Chief Whitewater.
Right. I think that, yeah, like you said, the slumlords, and I know, like, I never lived in New York, but, you know, just seeing the depictions on TV of how it was in New York, of how people were living in those high rises, those dwellings and stuff like that. I think that this was just a gateway for them to be able to do whatever they wanted to do with the people that lived in those places.
All right, so now we're going to get into witness fees. Witnesses summoned by a subpoena under this title shall be entitled to the same witness and mileage fees as witnesses in proceedings in United States District Courts. Fees payable to a witness summoned by a subpoena issued at the request of a party shall be paid by that party, or where a party is unable to pay the fees, by the secretary. That's a lot to go through. You know, now you got to come out your pocket, because when they subpoena you, they might tell you, oh, your hearing is going to be held wherever, because it's federal, right? Now you got to figure out how to get there, right? And then if you don't have any money and you're indigent or you got pauper status, now you got to probably file another complaint to see if the secretary is going to front the fees for you, you know, just so you can have decent living conditions. So you got to pay again just to get decent living conditions. Anything you want to say on that?
No, I think that's pretty clear.
So we getting into criminal penalties. Any person who willfully fails or neglects to attend and testify, or to answer any lawful inquiry, or to produce records, documents, or other evidence, if it is in such person's power to do so, in obedience to the subpoena or other lawful order under subsection A shall be fined not more than $100,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. If you do not attend and testify to answer lawful inquiry, produce records, documents, or other evidence, the federal government will charge you $100,000 or lock you up in federal prison, federal jail for 1 year. That sounds like a deterrent to me for you to even want to go through the process.
Right. Yeah. Wow. You want me to pick up?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, to any person who, with intent thereby to mislead another person in any proceedings under this title, makes or causes to be made any false entry or statement of fact in any report, account, record, or other document produced pursuant to subpoena or other lawful order under subsection A, willfully neglects or fails to make or to cause to be made full, true, and correct entries in such reports, accounts, records, or other documents, or willfully mutilates, alters, or by any other means falsifies any documentary evidence, shall be fined not more than $100,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. I mean, their penalties were like criminal type penalties.
Yep. For housing.
Just for housing, right? To have a roof over your head. Okay, so enforcement by secretary, section 812A, election of judicial determination. When a charge is filed under section 810, a complainant and respondent or an aggrieved person on whose behalf the complaint was filed may elect to have the claims asserted in that charge decided in a civil action under subsection O in lieu of a hearing under subsection B. The election must be made not later than 20 days after the receipt by the electing person of service under section 810H, or in the case of the secretary, not later than 20 days after such service. The person making such election shall give notice of doing so to the secretary and to all other complainants and respondents to whom the charges relate. So basically, this is saying that you have the option to have your complaints decided in a civil action suit, I guess. Is that what that's saying?
Yep, civil action under subsection O.
Okay. B, administrative law, judge hearing in absence of election. If an election is not made under subsection A with respect to a charge filed under section 810, the secretary shall provide an opportunity for a hearing on the record with respect to a charge issued under section 810. The secretary shall delegate the conduct of a hearing under this section to an administrative law judge appointed under section 3105 of Title V, United States Code. The administrative law judge shall conduct the hearing at a place in the vicinity in which the discriminatory housing practice is alleged to have occurred or to be about to occur.
Now that's interesting because Yusuf L on high frequency radio years ago, he broke down administrative law.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're at the federal level, and this secretary, notice how it's an administrative law judge hearing. Right. It's a kangaroo process.
Right. So it's within their construct of a system, basically.
Right, because what we have to remember, by knowing our history, we understand we're the American, and then we understand the United States government is a foreign government that's on our land. That's how we have to look at government. We have to look at the United States government as a foreign body that's set up on our land, right? Because we've never been recognized by it, everything has to be due to our ignorance to play with it.
Right, exactly.
And when we play with it, because it's not our de jure form of government on this land, you're in make-believe.
Right.
that didn't become a reality for me until the first time I went in court and represented myself, which I've channeled many a times, which was to get rights from the state for my son. I learned very quickly in that process that the person that the judge calls before the court case starts, you think that's you, but that's not you. So you have to look at it from a third. When you're representing yourself, you have to be three-dimensional. You have to be outside of yourself. You have to think of yourself as the lawyer. Like if a lawyer, my client, you have to talk about your matter in that way. Like, yeah, you have to get outside of that because it's make-believe. It's like going around a Monopoly board. We're trying to make something real that's not really ours.
Yeah. Okay, C, rights of parties. At a hearing under this section, each party may appear in person, be represented by counsel, present evidence, cross-examine witnesses, and obtain the issuance of subpoenas under Section 811. Any aggrieved person may intervene at a party proceeding. The federal rules of evidence apply to the presentation of evidence in such hearing as they would in a civil action in the United States District Court. So it's like they're mirroring what happens in the District Court of the United States.
Correct.
Expedited. Do you have anything to say about that one?
No, I'm good on that.
Expedited discovery and hearing. Discovery in administrative proceedings under this section shall be conducted as expeditiously and inexpensively as possible, consistent with the needs of all parties to obtain relevant evidence. A hearing under this section shall be conducted as expeditiously and inexpensively as possible, consistent with the needs and rights of the parties to obtain a fair hearing and a complete record. Number 3, the secretary shall not later than 180 days after the date of enactment of this subsection issue rules to implement this subsection. Resolution of charge. Any resolution of a charge before a final order under this section shall require the consent of the aggrieved person on whose behalf the charge is issued. F.
We'll stop right there for today. If you want to make a note on that.
Yeah. Page 34. Okay.
Were we at subsection F?
Yes.
Okay. So we're still in the powers of secretary. We can see that there is a lot of information and a lot of responsibility for this secretary that's over the Federal Housing Authority. While I'm pretty sure you're going to show love to everybody in the chat. Anything jumps out at you while we were going through this?
Like we said, the secretary has a lot of power. I mean, and yeah, the secretary has a lot of power, and I think that they use that as an advantage in regards to getting away with a lot of things.
So if I were to summarize, since we've been reading this 1968 Civil Rights Act, the first maybe 20 some odd pages of it is about Indians and what their government can do, what an Indian can or can't do, what charges, the United States government can overlook Indian government's jurisdiction and arrest them on. So we're talking maybe the first 20 some odd pages of this document is about Indians. And we're saying maybe the last 10 pages is about housing. So what I'm saying to people on this line right now that may be listening to this video, this was your grandparents' era. If you the American, your parent, for people my age, my parents were probably 1968. My mama would have been 10th grade. My father already graduated. So they're young adults. So my grandparents would have been full adults. this government assassinated Martin Luther King in Memphis, Tennessee, and the first 30 some odd pages of the 1968 Civil Rights Act has nothing to do with Negro, which was the term used at that time on this land through media and through certain states with its Jim Crow laws. No coloreds allowed, no blacks allowed, no Negroes allowed. I think one of the biggest things that has happened to our group of people is once they open up the doors for melanated people all over the world to become a US citizen, what's happened is my generation, those that have invested in these nonprofit organizations or these belief systems, because they don't understand American history, they forget that this government didn't give a damn whether you were Moor in the 1960s or Hebrew Israelite or Christian or Nation of Islam. When they said colors only, you wasn't getting a special privilege because you was a Moor or because you were 5%er, or you understand? So that's where I'm at with it. But now we're living in a world where you got all these different cliques. But if you look at your situation and your people and then look at the federal government, you can see it don't matter what the fuck you call yourself.
Right.
Anything you want to build on that?
I think you pretty much summed it up. I agree with everything. We just have to be more conscious of where we stand and you know, all get on the same page and have a united front to try to move the needle forward. And it goes back to the knowledge and the education and how this government works, basically.
Yeah, the show continues to roll as long as we remain ignorant.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but that's the benefit of the information age that we live in. Our grandparents couldn't go down to these state capitals. Depending on what state you lived in, we got to keep that in mind. During the 60s, what we're doing right now is the equivalent of going to your local government.
Archives.
Yeah, or maybe taking a planned trip to Washington, D.C. So what this would look like in the 70s and 60s is we done put together a car trip. We got our Negro Green Book, right? Because European didn't give a damn what your religious belief was in the 1960s, 50s, right? So if we come from the South or we finna go to D.C., you better have your Negro Green Book in the car, because you don't want to pull in the wrong town to get gas and come to find out no niggas allowed.
Right.
Then we would have had to literally rent a hotel for however long, let's just say a week. And we got to go down to the Library of Congress, and then we got to go in there with a bunch of quarters in our pocket, because back then you had to pay for copies.
Right.
So that's literally the process that would have had to be done prior to the information age. It's no excuse at this point when you can just go LOC.gov and you can pull all this up. There's no excuse for us to be niggas moving forward. And when I say niggas, I'm just meaning ignorant. You could be Christian and be a nigga. You can be Muslim and be a nigga. You can be a Moor and be a nigga. You can be a 5% and be a nigga. A nigga just means you don't know nothing about your family, but you know everything about a belief system. I'm gonna say that one more time. You don't know nothing about your family, but you know everything about the Quran, the Bible, or any other literature. But if somebody asks you, where your grandparents from? You may know the area, but you don't know nothing about them. You ain't got no records on them. God forbid somebody asks you what was up with your great-grandparents. So what they do when they say we all come from slaves, what they really telling you is, fuck your grandparents and everybody beyond that.
Yeah.
Just deal with your mommy and come forward. And that's what this government is promoting to our group of people when they tell us to just get in the melting pot with all these other groups of people. They're saying, hey, don't worry about what your grandparents did and your great-grandparents. You're people of color now.
And like you said, in order for this to work, we have to be in consent. And that's the issue, is that we got to get the information to know better. That's what I feel.
Absolutely. Can you do a roll call on the chat and shout out everybody that's in the chat that's rocking with us tonight? How many people we got in the building?
We got 51 people right now. We got let's see here, Michelle, Marquise, Cherokee, Tolu, thank you guys for tapping in. Charles Johnson, Elizabeth Young, PG, Karen Williams, Mr. Atlas, Herb O, Who Chill, Davina Bolden, Miss Lita, Mr. C. A lot of the same people that we get pretty much every week. Thank y'all so much for joining us tonight, and thank y'all for the continued support.
Absolutely. And again, I definitely we gotta take a moment. We shot it out at the beginning of this video. We definitely want to end it off on a strong note as well. In order, shout out to the Indigenous One channel. He was the first one that allowed us to do a presentation on this channel. Shout out to APOW TV. As I said earlier today, APOW TV played a major role in us going on Sinetta last night. And that's what working with each other looks like. You know, just vetting people as adults, looking at what they're presenting, if the information is true and correct, and if you feel like it's something that you would want to pass on or show to your family members, why not rock with them? So again, shout out to APOW TV. Forever grateful for and look forward to continuing to build with other people as well. We gotta start working together. It ain't no way around it. And last but not least, Copper Empress. She extended her arms and you know, let us come on our platform, and we've been able to build multiple times on her platform, Indigenous One and APOW TV. But Copper Empress is another one where, you know, they didn't have to allow us to present information, you know,
Right.
but everybody's moving off spirit. We're spiritual people. We know when people keeping it real and when people got an angle to it. So everybody that's keeping it real and just trying to pour clean glass in a dirty, a clean glass of water in a dirty situation, let's all form like Voltron, man. Let's tribe up, let's confederate up, and let's keep putting this truth out here and make it hard for them to keep lying to us. So
Definitely. Thank y'all.
we'll catch y'all next week.
Peace.